Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to our latest webcast that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly as part of our Roadmap to Recovery series. And this morning is a very special day because a new framework for UK cruise operations is being launched. And so I'm delighted to be joined by three leaders of the cruise industry to talk about it this morning. So a warm welcome, first of all, to Stuart Leven, who is Vice President of Government Relations at Royal Caribbean. To Andy Harmer, who is Senior Vice President of Membership and the UK and Ireland Director at Clia, and to Tony Roberts, who is the UK and Europe Vice President for Princess Cruises and also the Chair of Clia. This morning is an important day because a new framework for cruise operations has just been released. Now, if you could please just tell me who's behind that, who's involved in that, and what it means for the industry. Maybe start with you, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, Lucy. So over the past 4 or 5 months, the whole cruise industry has been coming together and working very collaboratively on producing a framework document that lays out some of the steps for the safe resumption of cruising. So we've been working with all of the experts from maritime policy, from medical, from operations, etc. And we've been coming together as an industry to develop this framework document. And I think the important part of that process has also been that we've really worked closely with government as well. So that's been led by Department for Transport, for example, but we have been working with most other relevant government departments too. So whether that's Public Health England, for example, or the Maritime Agency, or even the devolved administration. And we've really now got to a point where the government is happy to commend the work, to commend that document, and so we're publishing that framework document today.
Okay, well that sounds like good news because of course we know after a voluntary suspension of cruising, which you all made, obviously the Foreign Office then brought in this guidance against cruising. So in how far is this new framework that you're bringing out? How far is that a step towards getting this guidance lifted and for crews being able to restart, Tony?
So I think that what the framework document does for us, Lucy, is it allows the operators to really start to plan the detail for how we'll return to service when the time is right to do so. So it provides a real end-to-end structure from the point that people book right through to the point that they get off the ship. About how cruise lines can manage that whole process and gives the operators the opportunity to really develop those detailed protocols and start to plan how they'll return to service. What it doesn't do is allow the sector, of course, to restart tomorrow, and we still need that change in FCDO advice to do that. But it really is an important first step in the planning of that return to service. And also, as Andy mentioned, it's fantastic to have worked closely with the government bodies and to have their endorsement of the framework document that we've put together. We really do have an excellent document that is a great first step in a return to sailor.
Okay, and Stuart, I know it's in 3 parts. It covers obviously the operations themselves. It then covers the crew, and then it covers passengers. So it gives guidelines for each of those different areas. Can you go into any detail at all around what is being advised and what this framework is in each of those areas?
Sure, Lucy. Well, the reason we structured it that way is because it then allows on the operator side, it allows the cruise lines to go away and do individual risk assessments now. So that's the next stage of what happens from the operator side. On the crew side, that's self-explanatory. Obviously, there's protocols for crew to follow, and we need to call that out. The safety of the crew is as important as the safety of the customers. So that's pulled out in its own document. And then on the passenger side, it's if you actually looked at the Foreign and Commonwealth advice around airlines, you will see it's very instructive on their website around the advice that they give to passengers so that they can prepare for the cruise that's coming up or the airline that's coming up or the flight that they're going on. So the purpose of actually splitting it into the 3 was so that on the passenger side, when the time is right for the FCDO advice to change, we have a document that can be published that says if you are planning to take a cruise, here's the things that we need you to do as a passenger before you come on board the ship.
Okay, all right. Now, obviously, some lines have restarted operations already in Europe, and presumably they've gone about it in their own way. They've taken their own sort of risk assessments and they've put in place what they believe is the right requirement. So why did they do that before this document came out? And does this document change anything that's happening currently, or is it just literally you're using that guidance that they've already got, or their experience, to sort of shape the document? Which way round has it been, Andy?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, as you say, some cruising has resumed, albeit small scale, but some cruising has resumed in the Mediterranean. And actually, as we watch what's happening in the Mediterranean, those protocols are working. And that should act as a further encouragement to the UK government that as these protocols are being developed by individual cruise lines, as well as by the industry, then they can be adopted and there can be confidence again in the cruise experience. But actually, the UK document is very much based on international documents that exist in other countries as well. We certainly take that input. We then bring into the document the UK specific regulations and restrictions that apply over things like social distancing and face coverings, etc. And we've ended up with a document that actually is still going to be living and breathing. It will still be updated. It will still take on board both the situation in the Mediterranean, for example, as we learn from that experience, as well as changes in other medical or regulatory areas. So we're very much learning by what's happening internationally, and we'll have a framework that will give confidence to customers who are looking to book a cruise.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it's living and breathing and it will evolve. And of course, some might be wondering why it's taken so long to get to this point. But is that the same reason that obviously the situation has been changing by the day, I guess, in this whole pandemic?
Yeah, and cruising is complex. It's if you look at the venues that we have on board, if you look at the crew on board as well as the guests, if you look at the international aspect of cruising is a complex type of holiday. But actually, we've all been learning by what's been happening on land as well as anywhere else. We've been watching the pandemic. If you look at how testing has evolved, how some of the other measures have evolved as well, we've had to take those on board. And of course, we've wanted to get to a point where government is comfortable with the framework document, so that when the time is right, they will change the FCDO advice and we will allow for the resumption of cruising. So it's been really important that this whole process has been important to bring everybody with us.
And Tony, Andy mentioned there, when the time is right. It's a phrase we're all using. We know we can't resume until it is right, it is appropriate. But does this document being released, does that give you confidence that we may see a restart of cruising this year?
I think it's really difficult to predict that, and I think we've all gone through a bit of a journey here of when we felt the advice may change, we're doing this in a backdrop of when cases are increasing and parts of the country are putting under further lockdown restrictions and so on. So it's very difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen and when that advice will change. But as Andy mentioned, it's important that we have a framework with this endorsement and with the backing of the various government parties, so that we can really start that planning process. And what I believe we'll see over the coming weeks is the operators having more confidence about how they'll return to service and starting to put a bit more structure and detail around their return to service plans over the coming weeks. I think that in turn will help to give travel agents and consumers confidence that that some of the plans certainly for early 21 and into next summer are feeling much firmer, and therefore they'll perhaps get behind that, and consumers will start to have the confidence to book.
Okay, so your plan is to really promote the fact that this framework now exists, and you think do you think, Stuart, will have an impact on agents' confidence to sell cruise and consumers' demand to take a cruise?
Yeah, Lucy, I think, look, there's a whole ecosystem that hangs around the cruise industry out there, be it suppliers around the ports, be it the travel agencies, as we know. And, one of the things we have to recognize is it's coming back. Cruise will be back. But one of the things we also have to begin to do is give confidence to the agents, especially, who are responsible for selling cruise, responsible for talking to the customers, and responsible to try to educate them of what cruise might look like when it does first come back. When it comes back, it will come back gradually. But the fact we've got the framework documents out there, and the way, of course, as you know, Clia will then articulate them into what we call pub speak, but actually in travel agency speak, where in actual fact the agent has some tools that if someone comes through the door and says, I'm thinking about a cruise, but I have concerns, how do you think the cruise lines are going to cope with the COVID situation? They have the tools and, you know, in the toolkit to actually have these discussions with them. So as Tony's already said, you know, a big bit of this, I think, is about giving confidence to the trade and also giving confidence to the consumers. There is some light, you know, coming through at the end of the tunnel here. And this is another step in the journey that we're going down, and having the government endorsement of these frameworks is a really big step forward for us as a, you know, as an industry as we go forward. And as we head towards the wave period, which is going to be critical.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So this really did require a sort of signature sign off from Grant Shapps that you say it's from the Department of Transport. So this is he's basically passed this framework, Andy.
Well, it's they have absolutely commended the work we've done. They worked with us hand in hand over the past few months to make sure that they're happy with the document, that you know, and we've worked with all of those other government departments as well, and that's been really important. But
and what's the process if people don't follow the framework? I mean, is there, what's, you know, like if a cruise lines, have they all said they will, and or is it just cruise lines within Clia, or how does that work? And what happens if somebody is found to not be following the framework?
So it's a good question. It's a framework document. So actually the policies and the procedures by the individual cruise lines will fit within that framework. But and actually, to your point on non-members, we've of course been working with non-members as well, because this is an industry-wide challenge and crisis. But what I would say is that, you know, travel agents should have no doubt that the industry has been working incredibly hard over the past 4 or 5 months. We are an industry that always goes above and beyond. We are always been doing the right thing. You know, we were probably the first industry to voluntarily suspend operations globally. We continue for certainly for UK and other parts of the world to have that voluntary suspension in place. And that has really allowed us to go into detail into what the resumption of cruising will look like. And so this framework document is very much that first step in that process.
And for you guys then, this has obviously been a big piece of work, but I guess the work doesn't stop here. Is it more lobbying, or what's the next stage in terms of your discussions with government to get this Foreign Office advice lifted?
Absolutely. So this is very much the first step in the process. And you know, as Andy mentioned, there's been a number of groups bringing expertise together across operations, public health, across the whole of the maritime industry, really, to develop this framework. But in addition to that, we continue to work with various government bodies and continue to develop, the operators will continue to develop protocols and approaches and so on. So this is very much, you know, whilst it's been several months in the making, it's only really the start of the process, and we have much work to do to restore cruising to how it was pre-pandemic. And you know, ultimately, you know, as Stuart said, we're going to come back and come back slowly at first, but you know, the goal is to get back to where we were pre-pandemic and to be able to operate in the way that we were.
Stuart, you mentioned the wave period there. Do we expect it to be a wave period like normal? Is that realistic, or how do you see that period panning out?
Who knows? Is the honest answer. But you have to look at some of the evidences. You know, Lucy, this is a $10 billion business in the UK with about 88,000 jobs assigned to it. And you know, when you look at the travel partners that engage with cruise, the ecosystem is there to make it a good wave series. But the thing that I think is even more important is, you know, I'll speak of our group, but having spoken to you know, the other cruise lines as well, the demand that's there from existing cruisers who have missed their cruise this year, who want to get back onto a ship, the demand that you have out there. And bear in mind also, so many of the cruise lines gave you know, their guests, when they had to cancel because of the voluntary hibernation that the industry went into, they gave them future cruise certificates or refund credit notes and stuff like that. So there's a whole host of bookings out there from, you know, tried and tested cruisers who we all love and we all engage with, and also people who had bookings in place who want to you know, get back into the, you know, their favorite type of holiday going forward. That even just with the demand that you get from these two communities, if we can get the confidence right, and I believe we can get the confidence right because things are moving in the right direction, if we can do that, then it just points towards the fact that, you know, the wave period, whilst I don't think anything's going to be normal at the start of next year, it should be closer, getting back towards, you know, the sort of wave period we're used to.
Which is great to hear. And Tony's launched a ship as well, so we've got more tonnage. That's not stopped. I know it's been slowed down because the shipyards have been closed themselves, but that's great news. Andy, just finally, people will obviously watch this, they'll read about your framework, but if they wanted to find out anything more, I know Clia is brilliant in its communications to the trade, so what will you be doing? Are you communicating to agents this news? How are you going to tell them?
Yeah, lots of information going out today to travel agents, so that's something to look out for. We also have a special webinar next week where we'll be going into a bit more detail into the framework document and also what the resumption of cruising looks like. And we have some more virtual events where we'll continue to explore not just the UK framework document, of course, but some of the additional steps that the industry is taking globally to ensure that we operate safely in our current environment. So watch out for all of that information.
I can feel another event coming on, Andy.
We you know what we like an event.
I'm sure we can do one all around the framework document, and we can make that really good for agents. So listen, brilliant that you've got this far, gentlemen. I know you've worked so hard, and I really hope it is that stepping stone towards the next thing we need, and to move towards that resumption of cruise. But for now, thank you very much to Stuart from Royal Caribbean, to Andy from Clia, and to Tony from Princess Cruises. Thank you all very much.